This is breaking news.
Happening right now, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s alleged victim, Kelsey Harbord, and her attorney, Gloria Allred, are holding a press conference outside the courthouse on Center Street.
I've waited 3 years for the opportunity to speak about the injustice of Cuba Gooding Jr. Cuba, my apologies. I had hoped to do so in the context of a trial in which he would be held accountable for the irreparable damage he did to me one summer night in 2019. Today I was robbed of that chance by a plea deal that never should have been considered. But I am glad to be able to say to you what I couldn't say in court. For those of you who may not know, Cuba Gooding Jr. forcibly grabbed, squeezed, and fondled my breast within the first 10 seconds of meeting me at the Magic Hour Club in Manhattan. I reported him that night, and he was arrested 3 days later. After that, in addition to the problems I dealt with inside the system, I had to endure 3 years of humiliation from his team. Cuba made a statement attacking my mental health in the press, claiming I had a warped mental state. His team then filed a motion with the court to question me about my breast size on the stand, claiming that insecurity around my breast size might have led me to believe I was sexually assaulted. Early on, the system began making special accommodations for him. Every time I questioned why he was receiving VIP treatment, I was given the same answer: because of who he is. At first, I was told he would be in a sex offenders program, one which has a reputation for being very firm with offenders. Second, I was told he would also be completing a separate alcohol abuse program. But because of who he is, he was allowed to trade both programs for time with his personal therapist. Because of who he is, he was allowed to call this informal therapy alcohol and behavior modification treatment. Because of who he is, he has been able to retract his guilty plea 6 months later to erase his criminal record. According to Cuba's lawyer, Mr. Rothman, the defense reached out to District Attorney Alvin Bragg personally to cut this deal for Cuba. And this is the same Alvin Bragg who campaigned on ending special treatment for celebrities accused of a crime. As a victim for whom charges have been filed, each concession was deeply offensive to me. But the one thing I was promised in the end was an apology in court for what he did to me, and for the opportunity to tell my side in a victim impact statement, since I wouldn't get my day in court. When it came time to make that apology, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s exact words were, "I'm sorry if I made anyone feel inappropriately touched." I didn't just feel inappropriately touched. I was inappropriately touched. Then, when I was giving my victim impact statement, his lawyer interrupted me and stated, "But what she said happened here for the last 20 minutes is a product of her imagination in large part, Judge." This statement by Mr. Gooding's attorney was false and undermined the terms of the deal Mr. Gooding made, and robbed me of what should have been a safe space to express the toll that being sexually assaulted had taken on me. Over 30 other women have come forward since I first reported what Mr. Gooding did to me. To date, Cuba Gooding Jr. has been accused of forcibly touching, penetrating, licking, choking, and, in a civil lawsuit, raping a woman. At what point are we going to take this seriously? When will we decide that this is dangerous behavior? And when is it the court's responsibility to protect the public from someone like him? The system is supposed to be about what he did, not who he is. And because of what he did, I have to worry about a guy's intentions when he talks to me on the bus. I have to worry about where a guy's hands are when he squeezes past me in the supermarket. I have to be worried about riding in the elevator alone with a man because there's nothing shielding me from something going wrong. Despite the harm to me, Cuba Gooding Jr. walks away from the court a free man without a record. It's like it never happened. But can the same thing be said for the women he did this to? Is it like it never happened to me? His actions tug at my sense of peace every single day. And that's compounded by the fact that this type of behavior seems to be tolerated in society. This is the grab them by the pussy culture we live in, where men like Cuba Gooding Jr. are a symptom of generations of discounting the irreparable harm of forcibly touching women without their consent. Where forcible touching isn't taken seriously, where women can be treated like a party favor. Then, if they speak out, proponents of that culture frame them as tattletales trying to ruin the fun in the club. And there's an unmistakable tone, an unspoken question, is that all he did? In my case, everything went right. I had video evidence and eyewitnesses, and still that wasn't enough. What does that mean for the next girl he does this to? What if she doesn't have video? What if she's not in a bar full of people? In Cuba's case, they've even erased his criminal record. He's back to being a public figure with no priors. So that next woman might have it harder than I do. What bothers me too is that it's not just because of who he is in New York City. I was told by prosecutors that in addition to the 30 women that came forward in New York City, there were a number of other women that reported it to the DA in Los Angeles and other states. But the Los Angeles DA has declined to look into it. Where is the protection for women if this happens again? What system is supposed to take care of us? The message he got today is that because of who he is, the rules are different for him. And and according to those rules, there's nothing to stop him from continuing this allegedly decades-long pattern of behavior if he decides to forcibly touch a woman again without her consent. I want him to be accountable for the consequences of his actions. But because of who he is, I am the one who will have to live with those consequences. We may never know why Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg agreed to this deal. But I can't help but wonder if the answer to that question is the same one I've been given these past 3 years. Because of who he is. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Victims were willing to testify if they were to commit that.
I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that there were, okay, well, I'm not sure, reportedly a number of them. I don't want to make a guess.
Kelsey, who was telling you?
I know that because, as I said, I myself accompanied some of them to law enforcement. And anybody I took there was willing to testify, if needed.
The prosecutor's office said that many times to me. Many, many times to me.
For those who can't hear the question is, who said to you because of who he is? And that was her answer.
Yes, so the prosecutor's office over the last 3 years.
And how did you feel about that?
The question is, how does she feel about that?
On the one hand, it's gross, it's disgusting, and it pissed me off. Sorry, made me angry, very angry. And I felt like, especially as we got further into the process, and I put in more and more and more over 3 years to try to help bring him to justice, and I was still told that. And I got more and more offended and just felt like betrayed, because at a certain point, these are people you're working with who are helping you along this, journey. They're supposed to be trying to do what's right. And so when they said that, it was just a slap in the face, and I have no reply to that, because to me, he is to me, he's not worth what they gave him. I'll say that.
Any other questions? The civil, okay, by the way, I just began to represent Kelsey after this hearing, and we are, going to advise Kelsey of her civil options, and because there's a civil system of justice, and if she wished to have access to it, she could.
So you guys are considering it, but it hasn't been filed yet?
Nothing is filed for her. Casey and I are representing Jane Doe in the lawsuit which we filed for Jane Doe, which is being litigated in federal court.
Here in New York?
And right here in New York, as Mr. Rothman will confirm, Mr. Gooding Jr.'s deposition has been taken in that case. Our client, Jane Doe, has also provided her deposition. Other depositions are taking place. There's no date for trial yet, but discovery closes soon, so, it may be that the trial is next year. We don't have a date yet. I do not know of any other pending civil cases against him. There may be, but I'm not aware of any.
Natasha Ashford.
Lori, what are you seeking?
Excuse me?
Natasha Ashford.
Oh, there is one other.
Yes,
It's settled.
one other.
Oh,
one
okay,
other.
well, it's not pending then, right?
I
It's
have to check
resolved.
If there's a
Okay,
disposition. I'm not sure if
okay,
there's
well,
one.
we don't know of any that are pending. There may have been one that was settled. We don't know. I don't want to engage in speculation.
I just want to be clear, are you considering or planning a civil lawsuit on behalf of?
Well, that's something that Kelsey will, discuss with us, and then ultimately we'll see what her decision is. But
So
that's not something that we're going to decide today.
Sure,
or,
sure.
Ms. Albert, you mentioned the 5th anniversary of Me Too
Yes.
articles about Harvey Weinstein. I wanted to ask you, given what we've seen lately, the Bill Cosby conviction being overturned, what happened today with Cuba Gooding Jr., the New York State Court of Appeals taking up an appeal from Mr. Weinstein, do you feel like progress that's been made is sort of unraveling? How do you assess things from then and now?
question is, how do I assess the Me Too movement, given that Mr. Cosby's conviction in Pennsylvania was vacated, and given what happened here today with the plea deal for Mr. Cuba Gooding Jr. Well, let me just say one thing. which is in reference to Bill Cosby, because you know I represented 33 victims of Bill Cosby. But I did represent one in a civil lawsuit, Judy Huth. We went to trial in June in Santa Monica, and we won. Mr. Cosby was found liable for sexual battery of our client, Judy Huth, when she was 16 years old at the Playboy Mansion in Southern California. That was an allegation of child sexual abuse. The jury awarded our client $500,000. And she's very happy and grateful to the jury for that. So his spokesperson said that he thinks that's a victory. I don't know anybody who thinks it would be a victory to have as your legacy, and I'm sure in his obituary that a jury found him to be liable for child sexual abuse. Moving on to Harvey Weinstein. As you know, that case went to trial, and that was because of Cyrus Vance and the wonderful prosecutors that he had to try that case in this courthouse. And I represented the key prosecution witness in that case, Mimi Haley, who gives permission to use her name. Based on her testimony, he was convicted of criminal sexual assault and sentenced to 20 years. Based on the testimony of someone else that I did not represent, he was convicted of third-degree rape and sentenced to 3 years, for a total of 23. Yes, it's on appeal, New York Court of Appeals. We don't know what they'll do. It'll probably be heard next year for oral argument. Having said that, jury is now being selected in Los Angeles, and I represent 2 of the 5 alleged victims for whom charges have been filed against Mr. Weinstein, and 1 Me Too witness called 1101B witness in California. So my point is, victims are not going to be deterred. They're going to continue to be brave. They're going to continue to cooperate with law enforcement. They are going to continue to understand that they have civil options to file lawsuits. And even if the criminal justice system fails them, as it often does, sometimes for political motives, which will always be disguised as legal reasons, in any event, women's movement is alive and well and strong and living in this country and all throughout the world. It's all about empowerment. It's all about justice. And we're moving forward. But we're also going to call it out when justice is not being done.
For Kelsey, you said the court excused him because of who he is. In your words, who is he to you?
The question is, she believes that he got special treatment because, quote, because of who he is, end quote. And so the question is,
Who is he to Kelsey?
Yeah.
who is he to Kelsey?
To me, he's somebody who is completely entitled and knows, he just doesn't understand no as a concept. And he what am I allowed to say?
I think that's it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but he is a nightmare, and he totally derailed my life. And yeah, thanks for asking.
Anything else?
So I know you're saying that you were told repeatedly because of who he is. Was there a deeper conversation, more technical conversation? Because Mr. Gooding Jr.'s attorney before was talking to us saying that charges were dropped because of lack of video evidence or something.
Okay, well, she's, okay, so, excuse me. If I'm recounting what you said correctly, you're saying that his attorney, Mr. Rothman, stated to the press that charges were dropped because what, lack of video evidence?
Something with the video evidence and how it wasn't, they maybe couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt what happened, you know.
Because of, you know, because they couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt what happened. Well, I think they had sufficient evidence to go to trial. They had the video evidence for hers. I would like to show it to you, but I can't, but I have it. All right. And they could have shown it at trial. Plus, of course, whatever she or any person who is alleged to be a victim testifies to is evidence. And in addition, there were others who observed what happened to her. How much is needed to go to trial against anyone? Are they saying that they need more evidence beyond a reasonable doubt plus because he's a celebrity? You know, courage is needed for victims, but it's needed for district attorneys too. And often prosecutors, they don't want to fail in a high-profile case. I get that, but that's not a reason to go not to go forward. They, you know, that's it. We'll take one more question, and then we have a.
Do you think it would have been different with Cyrus Vance?
Pardon me?
Do you think it would have been different with Cyrus Vance?
I don't know what Cyrus Vance would have done, but I can say this. Much of this evidence gathering was done under Cyrus Vance. And then suddenly, when Mr. Bragg is elected, this case goes bye-bye, goes away. I haven't spoken to Mr. Bragg. I don't need to, but I'm certainly available if he wants to speak to me. I mean, why? 3 years, countless hours for her and other victims to be interviewed. I had one client that flew all the way to New York from a distant place to be interviewed. By the way, the witness that I had, the Molyneux witness, was the one who filed a police report a long time ago in Santa Monica against Mr. Gooding Jr. She would have testified. So we have more questions than answers. And sometimes, as James Thurber said, the questions are more important than the answers. Thank you very much for coming. We're actually doing a Zoom with people who couldn't come today, and that's at noon. And it's in my office. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks.